Good day to Doctor and everyone. We are students from Introduction of Financial Accounting Class L. My name is Mable Xuewei and my metric number is 279652. We will be presenting on financial analysis for the year 2020. Now, I would like to introduce our Group 2 team members. The first one is ARIF bin ADHAN with the metric number of 279346. Next is Xuewei with the metric number of 279569. Next is myself, Mable Xuewei with the metric number of 279652. Next, TEOH with the metric number of 279661. And lastly, IZZAH BALQIS BINTI RASHID with the metric number of 280889. The two companies that we are picking are LIQUIDITY Industries Berhad and LBS Bina Group Berhad. We'll be comparing and analyzing four categories of ratios, which are liquidity ratio, activity ratio, profitability ratio, and leverage ratio. Firstly is LIQUIDITY Industries Berhad. This company is an investment holding company and is a furniture manufacturing company located in Malaysia. It focuses more on consumer discretionary products such as solid wood, vinyl laminated panel bedrooms, and dining sets. The second company is LBS Bina Group Berhad. This company is also an investment holding company primarily in Malaysia and China. This company involved in 5 main segments, which includes property development, trading, construction, management, investment, and golf club development. It mainly develops residential and commercial properties. Now I would like to explain on the definition of liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio is the ability to repay its debt as when they come to be due. There are two ratios which are in this category, which is current ratio and quick ratio. Current ratio is the calculation of the number of short time period assets when they cover a short time period legal responsibilities. Another ratio is quick ratio. Quick ratio is the number of times on how the short term liabilities is paid by cash, account receivable, and marketable securities. Next is activity ratio. Activity ratio is the period on how correctly a business enterprise is using its capital assets. There are 3 ratios in this category. The first one is inventory turnover, which is to calculate the frequency of the complete stock of an organization. Next is total asset turnover. This is to calculate how many sales you earn, which rely on the overall property we own. Last is the account receivable turnover. This is to quantify the corporation's effectiveness in amassing its money on receivable or debts. Profitability ratio is assessing a company's ability to generate earnings. There are 2 ratios included. First is profit margin on sales. It's the percentage of sales that a company keeps after deducting all the expenses. And second is the return on assets. It's the percentage growth rate in profits generated by a company's assets. Lastly, leverage ratio is to calculate the relative level of debt that a company has incurred. There are 2 ratios included. First is the debt to assets ratio. It's to measure how much of its assets are financed by liabilities rather than equity. Second, debt to equity ratio is to perform on how a company capital structure is skewed toward debt or equity financing.
Thank you, Mable, for the sharing. So my name is ARIF bin ADHAN. My metric number is 279346. And today I will continue about the analysis financial ratio of LIQUIDITY Industries Berhad. The current ratio of LIQUIDITY is RM 2.53 after rounding. It is because the higher the current ratio, the more liquid a company is. In a nutshell, the current ratio for LIQUIDITY is 2.53 and 1. The ratio for LIQUIDITY Industry indicates the business as RM 2.53 current assets for each 1 ringgit liabilities. Next is quick ratio. The quick ratio of this company has a value of RM 1.59 because inventory, prepaid costs, and other less liquid current assets are not considered in the calculation. A high quick ratio value is preferable. This ratio is more reliable current ratio variant. However, LIQUIDITY Industry had RM 1.59 quick assets for every 1 ringgit current liability. Next is activity ratio. Inventory turnover ratio for LIQUIDITY Industry is 6.47 times. The value indicates that the inventory turnover for LIQUIDITY has a low value, and it happened when the low ratio tend to indicate that sales from the company are not that strong. However, LIQUIDITY also sold and replaced the inventory 6.47 times during this year. Second is total assets turnover. The low ratio for the year 2020, which is RM 1.64. Generally, a higher ratio will favor it because it implies LIQUIDITY is efficient in generating its net sale from its total assets. In conclusion, the results show total assets. LIQUIDITY generate RM 1.64 sale for every 1 ringgit in total assets. Lastly, account receivable turnover. The amount for receivable turnover is recorded the highest amount. It is because a high ratio is strongly associated with good, efficient collection process, a high quality customer base that LIQUIDITY appeal of the business progress. However, LIQUIDITY Industry collect its receivable and converted them into cash 14.67 times. Profitability ratio. First is profit margin on sale for LIQUIDITY Industry, where the ratio is 8%. Based on the scenario represented above, it is possible to generalize that increasing sales and decreasing costs can improve profit margins. However, LIQUIDITY Industry BHT for every RM 1 ringgit generated by the company sale cap RM 0.08% as profit. Next is return on assets. The value for return on assets show a high value for the company. Return on assets can actually be used to gauge how asset intensive a company is. In other words, Lihin industry set a higher return on assets that will unfortunately be less asset intensive. Generally, the return on asset for Lihin had reached 40%. This value 40% also show for every 1 ringgit asset the company invested in, it returned RM0.40 cents as net profit per year. Next is leverage ratio. Debt to assets ratio recorded is not that high, but Lihin indicates the ratio is lower than 1. Hence, a significant portion of assets is founded which debt of the company has lower due risk. However, Lihin debt has supplied 31% for every 1 ringgit of the company assets. Last but not least, debt to equity ratio. For Lihin, in 2020 indicates a lower amount of debt financing, making Lihin potentially less risky. This is because Lihin is highly concentrated and may have a lower debt ratio. However, during this period, the debt equity ratio was evaluated as much as 10%. Lihin had RM10 cent debt for every 1 ringgit the company equity.
Now we proceed to analysis financial ratios for LBS Bina Group Berhad in 2020. So, for LBS Bina Group Berhad, current ratio they had RM1.35 cent current assets for each RM1 current liabilities. The current ratio will show the business enterprise capacity to offer short time period services if the duty was satisfied. Next, quick ratio. For quick ratio, LBS Bina Group Berhad had RM0.76 quick assets for every RM1 current liabilities. A high quick ratio value is preferable because inventory, prepaid costs, and other lost liquid current assets are not included in the calculation. This ratio is a more reliable current ratio variant. Second part is activity ratio. The inventory turnover for this company had sold and replaced the inventory 0.86 times during this year. The value showed that the inventory turnover for LBS Bina Group Berhad in 2020 recorded a low value, and this happens when the low ratios tend to indicate that sales from the company were not strong. For total assets turnover, total asset turnover of LBS Bina Group Berhad was 0.26, and it generated RM0.26 sales for every RM1 ringgit in total assets. In different words, the company's complete asset base became inefficient in generating sales in 2020. The last one for activity ratio is account receivable turnover. LBS Bina Group Berhad collected their receivables and converted them into cash 3.54 times respectively within the year. In conclusion, this ratio for the company demonstrated how ahead a company is at accumulating fantastic receivable via means of measuring the quantity of intents of receivable turnover in a year. Next, probability ratios. The profit margin on sales for LBS Bina Group Berhad in 2020 was 0.07 or 7%. The profit margin on sales recorded by LBS Bina Group Berhad was 7% for every RM1, and it is also generated by the company's sales. So, they keep RM0.07 as their profit. The value of return on assets for LBS Bina Group Berhad in 2020 was 0.02 or 2%. Generally, return on assets in 2020 for LBS Bina Group Berhad reached 2%. This value 2% also show for every RM1 on assets the company invested in. It returned RM0.02 cents as net profit per year. The last part is leverage ratio. So, the debt to assets ratio for LBS Bina Group Berhad in 2020 was 0.61 or 61%. In short, the company's debt has supplied 61% for every RM1 of the company's assets. Lastly, the debt to equity ratio of LBS Bina Group Berhad reached 0.68, means that 68% debt for every RM1 in the company's equity. This ratio below 1.0 is taken into consideration healthy.
So now we proceed with the comparison between the ratios of the two companies. The first type is liquidity ratio. My name is Xuewei, metric number 279569. Lihin Industry Berhad had only 2 ringgit 53 cent current assets for every 1 ringgit current liabilities, compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad had only 1 ringgit 35 cents. As comparison, Lihin Industry Berhad had a higher current ratio compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad. Hence, Lihin Industry Berhad was more liquid and in a better position to pay off its liabilities. In conclusion, the higher the current ratio, the better the company's ability to pay down short-term obligations. So we can improve our current ratio by reducing capital purchases, sell unproductive assets, and also prefer long-term loans. For quick ratio, Lihin Industry Berhad had 1 ringgit 59 cent quick assets for every 1 ringgit current liabilities, compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad had only 76 cents. As comparison, Lihin Industry Berhad had a higher quick ratio compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad. So means that the capacity to pay its current liabilities without selling its inventory for Lihin Industry Berhad was higher than LBS Bina Group Berhad. In conclusion, the higher the quick ratio for a company, the higher the capacity for the company to pay off its current liabilities. So we can improve our quick ratio by increasing its sales and decreasing short-term debts.
The second type is activity ratio. Li-Han Industry Berhad sold and replaced the inventory in 6.47 times per year, compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad had only 0.86 times. By comparing the two companies, Li-Han Industry Berhad had a higher inventory turnover compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad. So means that the total sales for Li-Han Industry Berhad were more than LBS Bina Group Berhad, and they was able to face insufficient inventory. In conclusion, the higher the value of inventory turnover, the stronger the sales and the higher rate of insufficient inventory. So we can improve our inventory turnover by adjusting the price of products and also improving the strategy of forecasting economic situations or trends. For total asset turnover, Li-Han Industry Berhad used every 1 ringgit in total asset to generate 1 ringgit 64 cents sales, compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad only generate 26 cents sales. As comparison, the total asset turnover for Li-Han Industry Berhad was higher than LBS Bina Group Berhad. So means that the sales and the revenues generated by its assets for Li-Han Industry Berhad were higher than LBS Bina Group Berhad. In conclusion, a higher total asset turnover illustrates that the company has high revenues which are contributed by its assets. We can improve our total asset turnover by having the assets which are able to generate revenues, and we can also reducing shrinkage. Li-Han Industry Berhad collected its receivables and converted them into cash in 14.67 times, compared with LBS Bina Group Berhad only 3.54 times. As comparison, the account receivable turnover for Li-Han Industry Berhad was higher than LBS Bina Group Berhad. So means that Li-Han Industry Berhad was more effective in collecting their accounts receivables, and their customers was able to pay off their debts in a certain period. In conclusion, the higher the account receivable turnover, the higher the effectiveness of the company in collecting its accounts receivables. So it can be improved by offering multiple ways for the customer to pay off their debts, and also offering some discounts for the customer.
This is the overall graph of profitability ratio for Li-Han and LBS company. Based on the graph, ratio profit margin on sales for Li-Han company was 8%. It indicates that the company earned 8 cents in profit for every 1 ringgit of sales produced. Ratio for LBS is 7%. It means that every 1 ringgit generated by the sales company, they will keep 7 cents as profit. It can be seen that ratio for Li-Han company was 1% higher than LBS. Referring the small notes given, both companies are likely to average. They are able to pay for indirect and other expenses including interest and one-time expenses. There are 2 ways to improve this ratio, such as reduce the production cost and business expenses, while other way is increasing the sales revenue. According to the graph, ratio return on asset for Li-Han company is 14%, while for LBS is 2%. It indicates that Li-Han company will return 14 cents, while LBS company will return 2 cents in net profit per year for every 1 ringgit in their company asset. It shows that Li-Han company was 12% higher than LBS company. So, it means that Li-Han company was better earning additional income or money on the lesser investment compared to LBS. To improve this ratio, companies should increase net income or revenue without adjusting any assets. Besides that, company can reduce expenses or decrease the cost of the asset. Next, this is the overall graph of leverage ratio for Li-Han and LBS company. Debt to asset ratio for Li-Han company was 31%, while LBS was 61%. It indicates that Li-Han company debt has supplied 31% of every 1 ringgit of the company asset, while LBS company debt has supplied 61% of every 1 ringgit of the company asset. It can be analyzed that ratio for Li-Han company was 0.3 lower than LBS company. So, Li-Han company will have more space to borrow money and the company will have less liquidity. At the same time, LBS will have higher difficulty to borrow money as lenders usually do not extend further credit to over-leveraged company. In short, to improve this ratio, the company can sell and list the asset, so the increasing cash flow can be used to pay off the company debts. In addition, the company can increase the sales without affecting any expenses to improve the ratio. Debt to equity ratio for Li-Han company was 10%, while LBS company was 68%. It indicates that Li-Han company has 10 cents, which is 10% debt for every 1 ringgit in the company equities, while LBS company has 68 cents, which is 68% debt for every 1 ringgit in company equity. Based on the graph, Li-Han company was 0.58 lower than LBS company, but overall both companies did not have negative value, and both ratios are below 1.0, which is considered good. LBS company with higher ratio indicates that their company may have higher probability in financial distress and unable to pay their debtors. At the same time, Li-Han company with a lower ratio indicate that their company is not fully utilizing the cheaper source of finance such as debt. Since companies should maintain this ratio between 2 extremes from 0.1 to 0.9, in order to decrease this ratio, Company can increase the revenue so that the company equity will increase, and pay down loans, increase the profitability, improve inventory management, and restructure debts of the company.